Almost none of the things we worry about day to day are actually new. Humans have been worried about them, stressed about them, and anxious about them for as long as there have been people. Marcus Aurelius lived through a plague. He endured a series of historic floods and witnessed wars happening in distant parts of the empire. Similarly, Seneca lived under political tyranny, just as Socrates did. Zeno faced personal disaster when he lost everything in a shipwreck, ending up basically bankrupt and destitute, only to have to rebuild his life from scratch. Throughout human history, people have grappled with disruptive technology, worried about their children, and stressed over their health. They have fretted about promotions and their standing in society. These aspects of the human condition are timeless and relentless. This is why the Stoics talked so much about anxiety, stress, and managing our emotions without being ruled by them. I relate to this deeply. I have anxiety, I experience stress, and I recognize that no amount of philosophy is going to eliminate these feelings. However, there are tools and strategies that the Stoics teach us for being less anxious, for not being ruled by our fears, and for avoiding misery caused by circumstances beyond our control. That's what I want to discuss in today's episode, some Stoic strategies for conquering anxiety. As Seneca notes, no philosophy can remove our natural feelings or inclinations. I still get nervous before almost any talk. I experience anxiety and nerves. One of the things I've been doing lately is using a Stoic coin as a fidget tool. I just spin it and touch it. It has a hole in the middle and features a quote from Epictetus on the front that reads, "Is this in my control or not in my control?" This encapsulates the essence of Stoic philosophy. As Marcus Aurelius reminds us, we must remember that the thing isn't causing our anxiety, we are creating it within ourselves, which means we can let it go. We don't have to surrender to it. That's just one of the little things I remind myself. Stoic philosophy isn't some magical solution that removes all our flaws, problems, and temptations. Instead, it offers a framework for working through them, a set of tools for dealing with them. That's how I approach anxiety, which is why I carry this worry coin with me. For me, there's a tension in Stoicism. On one hand, Seneca advises us to imagine all the things that could possibly happen. This is the practice of premeditatio malorum. He argues that the unexpected blow lands heaviest. If you're moving through the world naively, expecting everything to be wonderful and never considering what might go wrong, you'll be caught off guard when something does, and it will rattle you far more than if you had anticipated it. At the same time, Seneca cautions, he who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than is necessary. He highlights the dangers of spiraling and catastrophizing. When we contemplate premeditatio malorum, it's crucial to remember that it's not intended to torture us or lead us down a path of negativity. The point is to say, if this happens, I'll do this. If that happens, I'll do that. Thus, when we engage with this Stoic practice, it's not merely about generalized anxiety or worry. It's constructive. We focus on how we might respond, which should be empowering rather than disempowering, scary or alarming. By thinking through hypotheticals, we remind ourselves that we possess agency and power to respond effectively if these situations arise. It's not merely that we suffer more in imagination than in reality, as Seneca says. It's that we add suffering by dreading something that might happen. And while it might, by repeatedly ruminating on it, we end up living through it as if it has already occurred. We are borrowing suffering and sitting in it longer than necessary. When Zeno began studying philosophy, his teacher Crates assigned him peculiar tasks. One task involved carrying a pot of lentils through the Athenian agora, leaving Zeno puzzled. However, Crates understood that Zeno was anxious and overly concerned about what others thought of him. As Zeno walked through the agora, Crates smacked the pot with his staff, causing the lentils to spill everywhere. As Zeno stood there mortified, Crates said, "Courage, my little Phoenician, it's just a little bit of soup." Through this lesson, Crates demonstrated to Zeno that the situation wasn't as dire as he had imagined. Most people weren't even paying attention. Even if they were, the worst-case scenario he envisioned wasn't mortifying. Zeno hadn't died, and the outcome wasn't nearly as bad as he thought. This scenario is akin to what we'd call exposure therapy today. It was about toughening Zeno up and proving that what he was so worried about wasn't that terrible. Much of Stoic philosophy operates on this principle, encouraging us to test the impressions, opinions, and worst-case scenarios we fabricated in our minds, realizing that the common denominator in all of them is us. In Meditations, Marcus Aurelius shares his experience of escaping anxiety. He reflects on having a good day and then corrects himself, saying, "No, I didn't escape it. I discarded it. It was within me." That's the lesson Crates imparted to Zeno. The power to be mortified or not lies within us, and we must practice that as Stoic philosophers. I manage my finances fairly well. I make good money. Yet, I have one expensive habit I'm trying to quit, which is anxiety. I would argue that nothing in my life has cost me more than anxiety, and I've derived so little pleasure from it. The terrible truth is that it's no fun, and there's no real reward for it, aside from a fleeting relief when the bad thing I worried about doesn't come to pass. We don't usually think of anxiety as an expensive habit, but it truly is. How many moments have we missed out on? How many experiences have we lost? How much strain has been placed on relationships because we were worried, stressed, scared, or spiraling? That's really what anxiety is, a thief of time, joy, and presence. When we give in to it and indulge in it, we allow it to rob us of our peace. When we practice Stoicism, we're not trying to eliminate fear, stress, or nervousness altogether. Rather, we're working to limit the damage these feelings can cause, and more importantly, to reclaim the power we've been relinquishing to them. Seneca highlights an essential truth in his letters. We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. The things we dread don't typically come to pass, and even when they do, they're rarely as bad as we've made them out to be. So why do we persist in this cycle of worry? Why do we allow our thoughts and concerns to hold us hostage? The answer lies in our forgetfulness regarding what we can control and what we cannot. This is the core of Epictetus's teachings. We often believe we can control outcomes and prevent negative events from happening, but the reality is we can't. What we can control is our reaction, our preparation, mindset, and effort. So, the pressing question becomes, how do you bring yourself back to what you control? How do you stay grounded in reality rather than spiraling into imagination? One effective method is to pause and ask yourself, what am I in control of here? Is this within my power or not? This inquiry leads us back to that coin I mentioned earlier. It serves as one of the simplest yet most powerful reminders of Stoic wisdom. Is this in my control? If it's not, then why waste energy worrying about it? If it is, then let's concentrate on taking action, rather than squandering our energy on fear. Another effective strategy that Stoics employ to manage anxiety is breaking down overwhelming problems into manageable steps. Instead of being daunted by the big picture, focus on small, incremental actions you can take. Marcus Aurelius discusses this idea in Meditations when he advises not to let your imagination be crushed by life as a whole. He urges us to stick with the situation at hand and to ask, why is this so unbearable? Why can't I endure it? Most of the time, the answer is that we can endure it because we only have to deal with the present moment. Not the entire future or all the hypotheticals, but simply what's right in front of us here and now. When you break things down like that, focusing on what's immediately in your control, anxiety begins to lose its grip. This is something that has personally helped me. I often feel overwhelmed and anxious. But when I remind myself to take things one step at a time, it pulls me back to the present and calms that part of my brain that wants to panic about the future. This is also why Stoics emphasize mindfulness and awareness, being conscious of your thoughts, actions, and responses. Mindfulness is a way to interrupt the cycle of anxiety and bring you back to the present moment where we have the power to act. So, the next time you feel that familiar wave of anxiety, instead of getting swept away, try this. Take a breath and ask yourself, what's in my control right now? Break down the problem into smaller, manageable steps and focus on the actions you can take in this moment. That's where your power lies. And it's where the Stoics remind us we should always return. Additionally, remember that it's okay to not be perfect. Marcus Aurelius wasn't perfect, and neither was Seneca. Both struggled with anxiety, fear, and doubt, just like the rest of us. However, they didn't let these challenges stop them. They consistently returned to their principles and practices, working at it day in and day out. We can do the same. We don't need to be free of anxiety. We simply need to face it, keep returning to our Stoic tools and principles, and persist in our efforts. This is the lesson the Stoics impart. We are in control of our actions, our mindset, and how we respond to the world. That's all we need. Before we wrap up, I want to leave you with one last thought. Stoicism is a practice, not a destination. We won't wake up one day and suddenly have everything figured out. We won't become immune to anxiety or stress, but every day we can get a little better at managing it. Each day presents us with an opportunity to remind ourselves that we control our responses, and that's where our freedom lies. So as you go about your day today, whenever you start to feel that wave of anxiety creeping in, just pause, take a breath, and come back to that simple Stoic principle. What's in my control right now? It's a small question, but it's a powerful one. The more you ask it, the more you'll realize that most of the things you worry about aren't worth your energy. Remember, the Stoics didn't try to be perfect. They didn't seek to eliminate all emotion or fear. Rather, they aimed to respond to the world in a rational and constructive way. That's what we can strive for too. I'm proud of the progress you're making on your Stoic journey, and I'm honored to be part of it. Together, we can build stronger minds and lead calmer, more intentional lives. Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you found this helpful, don't forget to share it with someone who might need these reminders too. If you have any questions, thoughts, or stories you'd like to share, please drop them in the comments or reach out in the comments section below. I always love hearing from you. Take care, stay mindful, and keep practicing. Until next time, live with purpose and keep transforming your life, one thought at a time.